Hi, welcome to Wellness Wisdom. I am Sharon White-Fawn, founder of White-Fawn Wellness, and I have with me today Lauren Glikin, who is our local organic farmer here in Mariposa, California. How you doing, Lauren?
Good, how's it going?
Really good. Thanks so much for being here. I know this is outside of your norm because you're usually outside, which is your norm. So
Yeah,
thanks so much for taking your time to be here. So I'm
of
going to read
course.
your bio and then we'll get into some fun conversation about farming and what you do that is so valuable for our community and also for the planet. So,
Awesome. Thanks.
mhm. Lauren Glikin and her husband Andrew are the owners of Raw Roots Farm. Their 4-acre organic farm is located in the Sierra Nevada foothills. They are also teachers of sustainable living practices like natural building, solar technology, gray water systems, and so much more. They have 2 young, healthy, vibrant children, and I consider their entire family a valuable part of our community here in Mariposa. Lauren earned her Bachelor's of Science and Master's degree, both in environmental science, with the focus on environmental education from Antioch University in New England. And that's where she met Andrew, her partner in crops, I call you too. And together they began their farming adventures. Lauren taught outdoor education to both kids and adults and has worked in northern New Jersey on the Appalachian Trail, teaching science, outdoor living skills, backpacking, and canoeing, and I'm sure a lot more than just those things. She and
Mhm.
Andrew moved to California, worked for the Yosemite Institute, and chose to stay in California because they saw a huge need for a farm in this area, realizing that Yosemite and the Mariposa communities were both a food desert, as you call it. And I kind of want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Here today for us to have a discussion about organic farming, no-till farming, regenerative farming, and agroecology, and even touch maybe on big ag as it contrasts to what she and Andrew are committed to doing. What they do ties very much into our health and wellness, not just for us as humans, but also for the healing of our planet and for this earth. So yeah, I don't know where we want to start. I like to go big and then zero in, like now it's tell me about, let's talk about us as humans. But like the big, I was really when you mentioned agroecology, I had to look it up. I was like, I don't even know what that means. So I was, thank you. You're such a great educator. So I don't know if we want to begin with that, like tell us the difference between big ag and what you do. Um, as you had told me before, like some are good, not so good, or so is that okay if we start there?
Sure. Yeah. And feel free to hone me back in because sometimes I get lost.
So I'm super
But
excited to hear what you have to say.
yeah, awesome. So I'll just first say, and I always say this whenever I talk to anybody about farming and what we do, or anyone does, is that I personally appreciate anybody in the farming business, no matter how they're farming. It's a hard job. Even if you're just riding inside a tractor all day long, it's still, you know, it's not easy, and we're feeding people. So I think that's important to remember and recognize, and not, pick people apart for how they're doing it, but just be appreciative that they're doing it.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's important. And
Yeah.
every farmer is different. So, there's lots of organic farmers, we're all different. There's lots of non-organic farmers, they're all different. And it really depends on, what works for you and your situation. So how much land do you have? How many employees do you have? Or are you not able to have employees? That whole thing. Um, so it's all different. But see, I already lost my train of thought.
Ag versus your
Oh,
operation
yeah.
in Mariposa.
Yeah. So how we farm is more similar to how people farmed before the Industrial Revolution happened. So when that happened, it was awesome in that there are all these machines that were able to do things a lot faster, and they could, you could take a larger piece of land and turn it over quickly and put more crops in. And so once the Industrial Revolution happened, agriculture took a change, right? And so there was a lot more implementation going on, so a lot more tilling of the soil, like intensely, not just, horseplow used to do it, which would only go down, like that much into the soil. But now you have these huge discs that come through, and that's a whole different concept than just, like a little bit of structure. And we can talk about soil structure later on. But after the Industrial Revolution, then, you started to have the huge chemical companies that would come out with all their pesticides, and then they would also have, their seeds that are made to withstand those pesticides, so only they can germinate in where pesticides have been sprayed, that whole situation. And so big ag today is great in that it can grow a lot of food, for a lot of people that's needed, but it is not necessarily the most environmentally friendly
Mm.
or sustainable um, way of producing food.
Why
So,
not
oh
sustainable?
yeah,
I'm going to interrupt you right there
yeah,
for
yeah,
like, how is it not sustainable? To me, when I hear you say that, it seems like it would be more sustainable because they're manipulating all of the seeds in the soil.
right.
So what am I missing?
Not sustainable in that you need to keep adding the every year you keep adding those pesticides again.
Uh,
um you have to buy those certain seeds that have been engineered so that they can grow but nothing else can grow around it. Like for me, that's a little awkward. Like, all right, this thing can grow but nothing else is able to right now. Like that seems
okay.
a little um uh I don't know how else to explain it, but weird.
No, I understand where you're coming from now about that sustainability.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and then, when you do all that stuff to the environment, it doesn't react in a nice way, right? So there's either too many fertilizers that are then added to those areas because the soil's degrading because it's getting turned over all this time, or it's losing, topsoil's being lost all over the place because of all that
Mm,
um, disking. And so it's just not like a system that can keep itself happy for a long period of time. And
got
that's
it.
more like sustainable farm in my mind.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes perfect sense.
yeah,
Less manipulation, it's less natural, and when we start manipulating nature, we
yeah.
it's a lot of ill effects.
Right. Yeah. And the technology, in Big Ag has kept up with figuring out how to do that, but not in a way that's sustainable. Does that make sense? Like they keep creating new ideas, and I'm not an expert of it at all. But it's just not. It's not the way that Earth
Yeah,
works. If that makes sense.
exactly. So
Yeah.
obviously, you're not an expert in big ag, but you are an
No.
expert in what you do. And so let's talk about that if that's
Yeah.
okay. Because
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
to your
Totally.
farm and it's amazing. And I think you were almost completely off grid. No, tell me.
Not really. I mean, we have solar panels and we have batteries, but we're still tied to the grid.
Okay.
If there was a power outage, we'd be okay,
Mhm.
especially in the summer, for a bit of time. But yeah, we
Yeah.
need a
I
couple
just love that
more.
you go the extra mile for that, even.
Yeah. Oh
Like,
yeah.
so what you
Yeah.
do is amazing. And so continue. I'm sorry, I'm
Thanks.
interrupting because I'm so excited to hear.
Oh.
Shut up and let you talk.
It's all good. Yeah, so my husband and I, we started our farm, I think it's been about 11 years ago, 11 or 12 years ago. We really had hardly any experience farming beforehand. We both worked on a small farm, organic farm in New Hampshire as part of our master's degree. Um, but I didn't really know what we were doing. And we still don't think that we're like experts. People will be like, oh, these tomatoes look great. And I'm like, well, I've only grown them 11 times. To me, that's not being an expert.
It
And
is
every
great
year,
because I've had your tomatoes and I think
right,
you're an expert, but
right.
go on.
But, every year the weather's different and things constantly change. And so, yeah, we're definitely not experts, but we enjoy what we're doing and for the most part come out on top, which is, which is good. Um, yeah, so when we started farming, this was even before the regenerative term was being used, and that's now kind of like a flashy, cool word, which we're adopting because it fits our farm, not necessarily because we feel like we need to use it, if that makes sense. But when we started farming, our first year we tilled a tiny bit because that's how we learned in New Hampshire and in New England, farmers, they come through with their little rototiller. So not like those big discs, but enough. And then after a crop was over, they till it in, get the soil ready and put another crop in. And so we did that. And then both of us having backgrounds in ecology, lots of ecology, we're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why would you take soil that's happy and has grown something, and there's all these other, like mycorrhizal fungi and beneficial insects in the ground and everything. Why would you take this happy little ecosystem and when it's over, destroy everything and then hope that it all comes back again, right?
Right. Common
Yeah.
sense, really.
Right, right. And thinking more, Andrew and I both spent lots of time in the woods as kids and like as adults and thinking about how a forest works. You walk through a forest and there's tall trees, the leaves fall down, they decompose, it starts to build a soil, layer up, and it's happy. It's everything is contained and it creates this nice ecosystem. So that's a little bit more about what agroecology really is creating a good ecosystem that's happy for the soil, but also happy with nature and everything around it. So that after that first year, which was only like August through December, that we tilled this one little section of the farm when we were starting, we were like, we're gonna sell the tiller. We're not gonna do this anymore. And then had done a little research, and it was just starting to become not popular, but something that small farmers were talking about was just no-till farming. And so when the vegetable is done or whatever crop is done, we come through. Obviously, if it's like a carrot or a potato, we have to pull it out of the ground. But things like kale or chard, we just kind of cut it right at the base, like right underneath the soil layer. So
Mhm.
we're not pulling the root out. So we leave that. And then we just put another layer of compost on top. And then as the years have gone on, we've had to put less and less. But in the beginning, to create a bed, put some amendments, some organic amendments, and then plant the next crop. So we've been doing that now for 11 years, and we've noticed, I think it took about 4 or 5 years until we really noticed a difference in how the crops were turning over. There are less weeds because when you disturb the soil, all those weed seeds really love disturbance. That's why we call them weeds, because they're growing where we don't want them,
Right.
but they're happy, they thrive. They thrive um, during that. So like when you drive along the road on the highway or like a road, all those plants that are growing on the edges
Uh-huh.
love it because they're constantly getting, like disturbed and the seeds are happy and if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah. So we noticed that, and we also noticed that the soil's ability to retain water was increasing. And for us in California, that's really important.
Oh,
Um, that was a big concern when we started farming, was like, we don't want to use too much water. We know that some years it's wet and some years it's not, and we want to figure out how to grow a lot of food without a whole lot of water.
hmm.
Um, and so by not tilling, the soil structure is staying, I'm not a soil scientist, so I can't explain it in a very educational way, but it's able to hold the water a lot more than, if you're breaking it up a lot,
Yeah.
the water just kind of like goes through down to the ground level again.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So the soil is more nutrient dense
Hmm. Hmm.
and you're using less water, which means, I mean, I know farming is a lot of work, but I'm thinking less water might mean a little less work for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the weeds. So like there's less weeding. This time of year we weed because it rains and so
Yeah.
there's like grass piles and stuff everywhere. And you've been to our farm. We like to say it's a lot of organized chaos.
Yeah.
Chaos is really important though. Like if you take any basic ecology class, like chaos is important. It helps create a balance in an ecosystem. And so yeah, but there's less weeding, which is great. And we have like a good example a couple years ago, we got the wild boar in the area came through the farm. This is before we got the big Pyrenees dogs. That's why we got them. And they totally destroyed a good chunk of the farm in one night. And so those rows that got, tilled up by these pigs still to this day have more weeds than the rows that they didn't touch because the soil got disturbed enough.
And how
And
many
so
years ago was that, Lauren?
see, our dogs are 4, so about 4.5 years ago.
How
So we
devastating.
can still, oh yeah, it was that there's garlic thrown all over the place because they came in October. So we just planted the garlic and we still find it like, well, which the gophers move it too, but the pigs did a tremendous
Whoa.
job. But that's another story.
Yeah. Yeah. We could go down a rabbit hole on that, but
Yeah,
I'm glad the dogs are keeping them away.
yeah, yeah, they're
And
good.
that's like kind of your whole system though, right? Like all of
Mm-hmm.
the other different creatures, animals, wildlife even.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from your dogs keeping the wild boar away, but like tell us about that, like how you're utilizing nature and natural creatures of the land to also assist in your farming. Isn't that what's happening
Yeah.
there?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. So like the first 2 years, we hardly had any pests. So it takes a while for like the aphids and the whitefly and all the slugs and that stuff to find you and be happy. And so
Okay.
they found us after 2 years. Um, so yeah, a side note, whenever I see new farmers start up and they're like, yeah, and we have no pests, I'm like, you can just wait a little bit. They're gonna come. Um, so yeah, but then when they came, we started to see more of the natural predators come in too. So the things, so we like more frogs and other beneficial insects that are going to be able to enjoy eating, the aphids and the whitefly and that kind of stuff. And so in order to create habitats for them to come and be happy, we started planting at the edge of all of our rows. We always have sunflowers every year, just because they're easy to start and they drop their seeds and they grow by themselves. So they're a really easy crop, but so that brings in pollinators. It also forms little like habitats. We have some hedgerows along the edge of our property. So hedgerows, and we've gotten grants through the NRCS and also Xerces Society. We just got a bunch of plants from Xerces this year to put in natural hedgerows. So it's all native plants, and the way that you plant them, you figure out a way to organize them so that there's hopefully always one in bloom throughout the year. Which is really important. So there's always something to bring pollinators in, and then as these plants get bigger and turn into more of a hedge, they're a nice habitat, for snakes and for other sort of critters and insects and whatever. And so we have those along the edge of the farm, and then there's some like flower beds and other berms or beetle berms around the farm too. So there's places for these things to kind of go to and from and find homes throughout the farm. So that helps. Yeah, but that takes time.
And it's funny when I hear you say, "Oh, and it brings snakes and these people and whatever." Like I would have, I would have thought because I don't know anything about farming. I only pick what grows native plant, medicine. I harvest for sure, but I'm not planting
Yeah,
it because the sun is not green, as you can see.
I
But I would
agree.
think that, most farmers would be not wanting snakes and not wanting beetles,
Mm,
not wanting gophers. And so I love this concept of this happy, everything's happy. And so can you explain the symbiotic relationship of all of that? Because I know people, even if they have their gardens in their backyard, they're trying to keep the snakes away. They're trying to keep, whomever
hmm.
out of the area. But it sounds like
Yeah.
that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean to a degree. I understand in our area, well, some people don't want, rattlesnakes around for kids or pets or whatever. Um, but snakes, they're really good. They love eating gophers and mice and all those things that will chew up your baby plants that you've put out. They also keep the frogs in balance too. Like years where we had too many frogs, which is not a bad thing for a farm, but they're just like everywhere. The snakes help keep them in balance, just as the frogs are keeping the aphids in balance or whatever. whatever it is. But yeah, it's good. I mean, we have gopher problems, and gophers are probably the more annoying problem as a farmer, but we have some cats, and we've gotten really good at setting gopher traps. And so we do, try to mitigate them, but we also plant more than we need in theory, so that not
Oh,
that we're trying to feed the gophers, but that, it helps balance out what
count for
yeah.
some loss because of the gophers. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't envy anyone who just has like a tiny little garden in their backyard, because all it takes is like two gophers to come in overnight and you know,
oh, girl,
you're
tell
done.
me, part of the black oak restoration in Yosemite.
Hmm.
So I was invited to come out and plant some, and therefore they gave Gary and I three of these little black oak, like little tiny little things, right? And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna plant something, right? So I did, and I planted them together because they supposedly, will flourish better together. And then I put these little gates around them. And I was so proud. I'm like, oh yeah, good job, Sharon, right? And I would go up there on the hill and take my little watering can and water them. I'm so excited. And then and they were just tiny little things. I got these tiny, like two leaves. One had one leaf, like that's how little they were, right? And I'm all proud of myself. And I'm, son of a gun, if you couldn't see, it was like a cartoon where the dirt was rumbled up like this. So some little gopher came and just took because it was still almost attached
Hmm.
to the gate.
Hmm.
I'm like, ugh, that's all I was trying to grow. That's what I'm saying. Like, ate the darn thing. I'm like, it was so little. There's so much else. Like, we got 23 acres here. There's so much else you could have eaten, but you had to go under the gate to get that one thing. So
Hmm.
I get the frustration with gophers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all I was trying to do. So
Yeah.
two.
Last year was a great year because we didn't have as many gopher issues because of all the rain we got in the winter. It was just like flooded them out of all their little areas that they live on, under the ground. It was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the way you're doing it, and I love how you call it like the soil's happy, all the ecosystems are happy. Um, I did an interview with Rose Fluharty, the nutritionist in town, and she asked, like while we were talking, she goes, and how is it that their food is so good? Like your potatoes and your carrots are just like, they're exquisite. Like I cry sometimes. I might be like a biophilia person. Like I just look at this stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. But it's just really true. And now I understand why and how that gets to be such a beautiful, vibrant crop. Uh,
Hmm.
You grow happy crops because you have a happy
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Yeah. And there's like I actually can't, but we could go down a whole another hole of like the science behind what the word happy means. I just use it because it's it makes sense to me. But yeah, no, I know like we just traveled. We went to Kauai for a couple weeks, and I love traveling, and they have great farmers markets there, so the fruit is delicious, but they don't have very much produce because it's an island and it's different and it's different culture, so like it's more Asian greens, which is fine, but there's just not a lot of fresh produce that I'm used to. And so I come home and I'm just like, "Ugh, I need to eat." So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So would
definitely
you call
true.
that, I like that term food desert. I never heard that before
Mm,
until we had this conversation. So I want to understand more about this food desert. And I was just curious,
yeah.
you're saying that about what?
So yeah, I would say so. First off, my understanding of a food desert comes from grad school, which was back in 2008, 2009. So things might have changed a little bit in the terminology. But a food desert, and it mostly pertains to, places, if you think of a city like New York City or San Francisco, or a place where people, the only access to food they have is going to like one of those little stores on the corner, right? That has alcohol and some milk and, kind of like our gas station
Yeah.
stuff. So they don't really have access to fresh food. So that's considered a food desert. All right. So there's like a lack of fresh stuff. The term has also then been used to think of, other situations. So Yosemite Valley is a huge food desert, right? Because there's just like the one little store, and that food, they do a great job of bringing food in, but it's not very fresh, you know.
Yeah. By the time
Um,
it gets there, because it's so remote.
Right, right, right. And so, and even, in Mariposa, it's a little bit better, right? Because it's like slowly closer to to fresher selections, but it's still not that great. And the interesting thing, I know I had mentioned in my little email that I view Merced also as like another version of a food desert, or the Central Valley itself, even though so much food is grown there,
Mhm.
most of it gets shipped out, to other states.
You
And
know,
it's a
it blows
huge,
my mind.
and
Sometimes I'm like,
yeah,
Why is it so expensive? It was grown 5 miles from my house. Like, I don't understand." And
right.
so,
So
yeah.
it's a different degree of like what that term means, but just access to local fresh food is kind of more of how I view that term. And so Andrew and I, we lived in Yosemite for 4 years in Foresta, which was very remote. And we suffered from this lack of good eating. We had lots of grains, lots of stored stuff, but the fresh food was, I mean, we tried to grow stuff in Foresta, which was extremely challenging because the elevation's so high.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
Yeah, that's wild. I know, I hear you. If I don't have live food, like I don't, that's the other thing I don't know that a lot of people understand about the minerals and the nutrients of live fresh produce and how that is so important for our own energy level. If I
mhm.
eat live food every day, I'm sluggish. I get when you come back from Hawaii, you're like, I need some. Just it adds a whole nother level of vitality and energy to us. People are exhausted, people are stressed out, and then they're eating processed food or sadly maybe in a food desert area where
Mhm.
they're just not getting those nutrition, the nutrients from the food,
Yeah.
or it's just so old and it's just like, and you're just like,
Mhm. Or it like, and this is again is not a diss on anybody. A lot of our food is grown hydroponically, which I think is an awesome invention for places where people don't have access to soil,
Mhm.
right? And you need to figure out a way to grow food without that. But it lacks flavor because there's lots of water in it. And the only nutrients that are being sucked into the plant is what you're putting into the system. You have to pour
Mm.
liquid of whatever into your system. And so that food's not very nutrient dense.
Right.
Um, and it can be organic too, which is like another whole topic. Most of our organic berries, like strawberries and blackberries and stuff, are hydroponically grown. So that's why they're like big, but not, yeah.
Huh. In general, but not from your farm.
No, no, no. We don't do any hydroponics. We're all in the soil. Yeah.
Yeah, I took
Yeah.
a course that they were offering here in town on hydroponics. And I mean, it makes sense. And that was basically what they were saying for people who can't, or
Hmm.
don't have the opportunity to farm and, talking about how to utilize things that you were going to throw in the recycling bin anyway, or throw in your trash can anyway. And I was like, that makes sense. But I like to have that point of view that they might not be as nutrient dense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Let me see what other questions I wrote down.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Or you can continue on. We don't have to. I just,
No,
it's,
no,
yeah.
no, it's all good.
Okay, cool. So we talked about the food desert. Some comment that you made in some parts of the world growing food. However, oh, we already talked about that too. So, yeah, that's really interesting. That's what I was going to ask about growing food. You had said, however, it can happen. So we talked about big ag and kind of depleting nature's already regenerative abilities and then
Hmm.
basically interfering with that. And so then would you say when they start to manipulate like big ag now, I'm talking about, we've gone back to the beginning, going deep and turning all that up and,
Hmm.
put the seeds that they modify. Would
Hmm.
you say then those foods like hydroponics also don't carry the same level of nutrients?
I would think they'd probably be the same. I don't know enough to give you like a definite answer because they're still growing in the soil. Although, and they still amend the soil, but it depends. It depends. That's my answer. It depends.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Organic versus non-organic. Tell me about your points of view on that.
Yeah, that's another good question. So we've been certified organic for about 4 years. We've always grown the same way. We didn't change the way we grew to get certified organic. We just finally decided to pay a little extra every year and do paperwork, really. Um,
Uh,
but it's important. It's whatever. But I think organic's great. I think, that term came about in the 1970s, and the USDA decided to do a certification program so that you can only use that term if you've been certified.
you pay the
So
money.
that's right. That's the only word, you know, that has that. None of the other words, regenerative, sustainable, pasture raised for eggs, natural, all that stuff, you can just say. There's no person stamping like, yes, you're actually like doing that.
Right.
Um, so that's why we kind of went to get certified, just because it is at least a certification in those regards. But there's pros and cons to going through the process. We're such a small farm, and the people who come and certify us every year are always really excited to come and see our farm, because we're like, in their minds, an actual organic farm. We're not growing one crop, right? We're not a monocrop of just almonds for hundreds and hundreds of acres. Like, we literally have all these different things going on. And so we're kind of more of what the term was created for. It has turned into more of this big ag situation. And so it's still fine, but like, you can till. There's nothing about that you can't till to be organic. That's like a whole nother um, thing. So organic versus non-organic, like practicing organic versus not practicing organic. I definitely think organic is better, um, for us, for the earth, for yeah, for all. But I don't know if that answered.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
more like the level of nutrients, I mean,
right,
pesticides aside, I mean, ugh, we
right.
know stuff like this. But organic does matter to me. And sometimes because it's so much more expensive, I'm talking about the grocery store. Whenever you're
Mm,
there and I'm in town, I'm definitely stocking up. Like, I know next week might be the last one, and I'm just like, I'm going to have to freeze these things. I'm going to have to like preserve some, like, just because, yeah, it cracked me up too when you were going to Hawaii, and I was like, what are you going to do with all this broccoli? Like, I'm going to feed it to the chickens. I was like, I'm going to go have dinner with your chickens.
right.
But man, those chickens eat well, and it
They
shows in
do.
their lives.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah,
terrific. So I lost my train of thought too. Organic versus non-organic. And so, yeah, the markets, it's sometimes just way more expensive.
yeah.
The cost of all the foods has gone up. And
Yeah. And I always say the best thing to do, if you're able to, is to go to a farmer's market or go someplace where you can talk to the farmer. And they may not have an organic, sign, because they haven't gone through the process, but just talking to them, and you can ask some really simple questions like, um, what do you do with your row when your crop is over? And so you can hear what their process is like, and then you can decide, oh, it sounds like they're doing, you know, a good thing, or I don't know about that. Because there are lots of small scale farms that just don't go through the certification, and so they technically can't tell you that they're practicing organic standards, or because they can get in trouble if they use
I
that
love
word.
that. That's such great advice. So, what are some other
Yeah.
questions and things that people, and myself included, should be listening for or asking or understanding?
Yeah, you can also, I would say, eating local is the best. So, ask them like, where are you growing your food? When did you pick this? And it could be within a day or two. It depends on, the crop. So it's traveled less like in a storage container, so it's going to stay fresher, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can ask them if they spray. I know at the farmers market, it's at least in certified farmers markets in California, you can't have a sign that says no spray. It's, for whatever reason, it's like misleading, because spray could mean anything. It could mean water. It's like a really weird. So anyway, you could ask them like, do you spray pesticides? Or if you do, when do you do it? Because some of the big, nut and stone fruit producers do spray, but they spray not when like the fruit is on the tree. It's like more when the flower is blue. You can ask all those sorts of questions and make your own judgments
I
on what they're
usually just
doing.
ask
But
the one question, are you an organic farm? And
right,
so what I'm hearing is somebody could be an organic farm, but they can't tell me that they're an organic farm because they're not allowed to by law. So
right,
I've been under the impression, because I have asked that question at the farmer's market here in Mariposa,
yeah.
and you are the only one that says you're organic.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to like,
Person this because they're newer, and I know their operation because I've been to their mushroom place. So
oh yeah, and
yeah,
they're in the process of getting certified too. So
they
I think most people, at least in Mariposa at the farmers market, they'll let you know yes or no, even if they don't have a certification, or like they'll say yes even if they don't have a certification because I, I'm managing the market and I don't really. As long as people aren't like putting signs up that say they're organic and th're not actually certified, I'm not gonna like, you know,
okay. Well, that's
yeah,
good to know, because when they say no, I'm just like, well, I'm not buying from you. And then I don't. I'm pretty,
yeah,
that's why I'm going to the farmer's market, to get the highest nutrient value out of my foods. So, well, that's really good to know. I love that
yeah.
I didn't know that you were doing that.
Oh, yeah, another thing I do.
I know, because you're not busy enough with
Yeah.
kids and a farm and some more
Hmm.
CSA.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Lauren, this has been great. Do you have any other,
Yeah.
passionate things that you want for people to know about food and the farming industry, or whatever?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. It's like it's literally it's been my life, and raising kids. I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, I haven't really I mean, I've gone places in the world and I've thought about things in the world, but I've been really for the last 10, 11, 12 years focused on my little 10-acre property, and raising two kids. And
Oh,
so
it's 10 acres. I think I
you know,
said 4 acres in my,
well, we have 4 acres cultivated, but our property itself
yeah.
um is 10.
Well,
So
I mean, you're farming more than just produce, right? You're
right.
raising children,
Yeah.
that's the whole nother, and growing also personally and spiritually.
Yeah, trying.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we all are. So, let's share with people if they want to learn more about your farm, or learn
Mhm.
anything from you, or maybe even have you or Andrew come to their organization, or, to teach more about this. It's just really important. And it's confusing out there in the world. I just watched that Netflix show. Did you watch the one called You Are What You Eat?
Oh no, but I'm pretty sure I know what.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's more than just what you think. It's like, okay, yes, obviously nutrients and like that. But it was a twin study. I won't even go into it. But just if anybody has Netflix and they want to watch it and learn, because I learned a lot. I was like, gee, I thought I knew a lot, but it's really interesting. It was these studies that they did with twins, identical
Oh.
twins, and they checked things like microbiome. They checked things that with their neurological health, with all the systems. Like it was pretty fascinating.
Huh.
Even though you could, of course, come to the conclusion, yes, obviously we are what we eat better, be better. But in between, they had different stories of different farmers and different scenarios, and, exercise, and all that was folded in there. So I thought it was very well done personally. I watched it
Nice.
twice.
Nice. We'll add it to our list. This is our season, January and February, where we can like actually watch
Actually watched
TV. So we like catch up on a whole list of
it.
things.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
explain how they
Yeah.
can get in touch with you at your farm here in Mariposa County, California.
Sure.
Raw Roots is the name of the farm, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think the easiest is emailing us, which is just rawrootsfarm@gmail.com. Even if you just typed in Raw Roots Farm Mariposa in Google, like our website will come up and that stuff. But email is the easiest for me to answer, just because for the most part, except for these 2 months, we're so busy that I don't have time to check it until some weird hour of the day where you probably don't want a phone call from me back. So yeah, so that's that. We do, yeah, so where we sell, we have a CSA, which is community supported agriculture. And all of those are all different, just like all farmers are all different. Ours, we do 3 12-week seasons. We usually start the end of March. We'll start our spring season. And everything in the box or box, we use bags. We have people give us reusable bags that we just put their names on and
so
you
great.
know use them. But everything in there is grown by us on our farm. So some CSAs bring in things from different farms and put them together, which is great. Everything in ours is from us. We do offer, if people want to add mushrooms from Country Nerd Farm, they can do that. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, you can email me at Robert's Farm for more information about that. And then we go to farmers markets. So the Mariposa one is May through October. And so they'll start the first Wednesday in May. And then there's one in Merced that I go to every Saturday. So that one's year round. It's in the morning, 8 to 11. And it's like on 16th Street, kind of behind the 510 Bistro. So there's a big parking lot there. And that's where that one is.
Okay. So you just do those
Yeah.
two markets, Merced and
Yeah, and then we've been going so next week on Tuesday, I'm looking at the calendar.
Oh, I already know that.
Oh, the 23rd. We'll be luckily it was really nice that Hannah and Jake allowed us to set up at 1850 in their parking lot since they're closed on Tuesdays. So we'll be there next week, and we're gonna do every other week through the end of February. And then hoping we'll see how things go in March. We'll either be every other week or every week, depending on if things are bouncing back. Because this time of year, stuff it just doesn't grow very fast.
Right.
So we're there 3 to 5:15 p.m.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
It's already on my calendar. I was just like, okay. And I
Nice.
thought next week was going to be the last week. So
No, yeah,
so I don't have
yeah.
to hoard and process and freeze.
No,
and all the
no,
other-
you're good. You're good.
So when we freeze the food, just real quick,
Yeah.
but I do that sometimes. And then I wonder, I'm like, like the beets. Oh my gosh, the beets were so vibrant. I want all these beets. I can't eat that many beets in a week, or 2 weeks even. So I saved the greens and I used them in my juice. And then I took the beets and I chopped them up in little things and I'm using them in my smoothies, just the raw beets. I don't even
Yeah.
cook. By freezing them, what am I doing to the nutrients?
That's a Rose question. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't tend to freeze much just because we have so much, like I eat more seasonally, so whatever I can find out in the farm I kind of eat. I do know when you freeze, if you blanch it, you're losing some of the nutrients, right? Blanching, putting in the
I put it
water for a
in the
little
water.
bit.
I
So
don't blanch.
I try not to blanch. Yeah, I can. So I can a lot of tomatoes. That's like a big thing I definitely do every year because that, everything's preserved in that liquid. So
Yeah,
it's all still there.
yeah, that's good.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Cool.
but yeah, ask Rose. I don't know.
All right. All right, thanks. But I'm big on my smoothies, even in the winter. I juice and I do smoothies. And so sometimes when I get a lot of things, I'm just going to juice a lot, like every day. I'm just going to keep juicing because I don't
Yeah.
want it to go to waste and I want to get it while it's at its higher vibrancy in terms of
Hmm.
stuff. So anyway,
Yeah.
you are awesome. You're an awesome
Thanks.
person. What you're doing is
Oh,
awesome for the community and for the earth. I just love that you
thanks.
have that whole mindset of happy every creature.
Sure, I
So,
do. I mean, there's definitely days where I'm cursing out there because something came through and ate something. So I'm not always, you know,
well, no,
happy.
we're human. Yeah. Hello.
I'm from New Jersey, right? I can't hide the
I love that you're from New
hide
Jersey.
that.
I didn't know that. I'm from
Yeah.
Philly.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can hear it in
Yeah,
your
we got
accent.
that
I
little
have
East
lost
Coast
my,
edge.
yeah.
Little edge.
Yeah. A little bit.
When I moved here, I was like, you got to keep your Philly. I always tell people, I said, don't get my Philly up because I
Hmm.
don't think Mariposa could handle my Philly. I was just like,
No, they can't.
calm
They
down,
can't.
Sharon, calm down. But that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Yeah,
taking
of course.
time out of your day. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate you, your family, and what you're doing for the world. So,
Yeah. Thanks for offering me to come chat.
yeah,
It's
that
great.
was great. All right. Have a
Yeah.
beautiful day.
All right. Sweet. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for visiting my YouTube channel. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you want more like it, subscribe. Thanks. Have a great day.